So it's only been a couple of months now since the iPhone 15 came out, but already we're starting to get a pretty surprising amount of information about the iPhone 16. And if any of it is anything to go by, then this could end up being a really interesting upgrade. So what exactly does Apple have planned so far? First and foremost, Apple is planning to revamp the entire situation with the buttons. So with the iPhone 15 Pro, what Apple did was they replaced the ringer switch with a new action button, which was effectively supposed to be sort of a multifunction button that could be a lot more versatile than the ringer switch. But this was something that was only exclusive to the 15 Pro models. The basic models still only kept the ringer switch. This time around, Apple might actually be changing things a little bit because instead of putting the ringer switch on the base iPhones again, they're going to be moving the action button down to the base 16s. But that doesn't mean that Apple doesn't have anything specific or anything special planned for the Pro models in particular, because Apple apparently is supposedly working on a set of capacitive buttons. So as it is right now, the iPhones use the normal classic physical buttons on the phones. What Apple has planned instead is to replace these with force sensitive buttons instead of the physical ones. So you would press the button and you would get some haptic feedback. These have been referred to somewhat as solid state buttons because there isn't any actual physical click, but you do get some kind of physical response in the form of a vibration. This was originally planned for the iPhone 15s, but we didn't end up getting that this year, so it's reportedly been pushed back to the 16s, and there's always the possibility that it could get pushed back another year. Another route that Apple is supposedly planning to go with this year is with a brand new button on the Pro models. So Apple is intending to keep the action button and keep that the same as it's always been. Next year, Apple might take things in a little bit of an interesting direction because Apple may be introducing a fourth additional button to the right side of the phone. According to rumors so far, this has been referred to internally as a shutter button, and just from the naming of that, we can probably assume that this is some kind of button that would let users interact with the camera app a bit more like how people would use a normal physical camera. This isn't really confirmed. There aren't really a lot of rumors to corroborate this. So this is definitely something that we should all take with a grain of salt. But it's definitely something that has been rumored, and it would be really interesting to see if Apple did come out with that next year. But beyond that, Apple does have some interesting upgrades specific to the Pro models aside from just the buttons. So the last time that we got an upgrade to the displays in terms of size was back with the iPhone 12s, unless you count the Plus model that was released with the iPhone 14s. But next year specifically, Apple is supposedly planning to switch from the normal 6.1 and 6.7 inch displays on the Pro and Pro Max models respectively. They may actually end up increasing the sizes to 6.3 and 6.9 inches, which would basically make them not even just the biggest iPhones ever made, but some of the biggest smartphones on the market right now, particularly the Pro Max. But beyond this, Apple may even introduce some new display technology to make the displays themselves brighter. So Apple is supposedly going to use a sort of, I believe what they're calling is micro lens technology. And basically what this would do is it would make the displays appear brighter without using any additional energy. So it would basically allow for brighter displays that are also more efficient. Now beyond this, Apple also has some upgrades for the cameras, and what Apple is planning to do apparently is to not only bring the 5x zoom down from the Pro Max to the regular Pro, but there's also the possibility of the Pro Max getting what they're basically calling an ultra long telephoto camera. And we're not really sure what this really means for the Pro Max, and we're not even really sure if it's actually going to get it, but there is a possibility that the Pro Max could get upgraded zoom. So back with the iPhone 14s, Apple upgraded the main sensor from 12 megapixels to 48 megapixels. And supposedly with the iPhone 16 Pros, Apple is planning to do something a little bit similar, where they take the ultra wide camera from 12 megapixels and give it that same jump to 48 megapixels. So if they do end up doing that, it'll be interesting to see what kind of new camera tricks that they're able to pull off with this. Apple also seems to have some really interesting tricks related to their chipsets this year. Just like every year, Apple's going to give the new iPhones some new chip upgrades with the A18 and the A18 Pro, But these aren't just going to get new upgrades in terms of performance. Supposedly, Apple is actually planning to integrate generative AI support into these chips. So this would effectively allow for some new features throughout the operating system, like upgraded Siri interactions, automatic playlists in Apple Music, AI generated content, and things like this. And it's going to be interesting to see as more information rolls out what other plans Apple may have with these new AI features. And supposedly Apple is also planning to upgrade the batteries this year, but not just in terms of capacity, but some of the technology that they're using in the batteries themselves. So first off, Apple is planning to switch from their normal battery technology to stacked batteries, and effectively this would allow for Apple to increase charging speeds while also increasing the longevity of the batteries themselves. So basically faster charging, but your batteries won't wear down as quickly. And we do have actual numbers for what Apple is planning right now. Supposedly this is going to be 40-watt charging for wired and also 20-watt charging for MagSafe, which is up from 15 watts. And this is just one of the upgrades that Apple has planned for the batteries. Another upgrade that they have is to improve the thermals. And one of the big issues with the iPhone 15 Pros that a lot of people were talking about was the poor thermals on the iPhone 15 Pros. Basically, they would overheat really quickly, and supposedly Apple is actually planning to upgrade the thermal control by including new heat sinks in the base model, as well as new metal battery casings in the Pro models. So it'll be interesting to see how this ends up affecting the iPhone 16s over the long term. And all of this is supposedly going to come at about the same price as usual. We're still going to get $800 for the base model, $900 for the Plus, $1,000 for the Pro, and $1,200 for the Pro Max. But what's interesting is that Apple actually has a bit of an interesting idea going on for this year. And this was similar to the capacitive buttons that we talked about earlier on in the video. Apple had planned to introduce something else a little bit different with the iPhone 15s that they didn't end up doing. And this was the introduction of a new model of iPhone. So as it is right now, we have the base model, the Plus, the Pro, and the Pro Max. But what Apple was planning to do in particular was add an Ultra model to the lineup. And Apple is planning to do this with the iPhone 16s this year, but it is planned to go one of two ways. One of the ways that it could go is that this would be a completely separate iPhone to the rest of the lineup. So instead of it replacing any of the current iPhones, it would just be a fifth edition. And the other way this could go is that Apple could basically just replace the Pro Max with the Ultra itself, effectively just rebranding it as the Ultra. And this would make sense considering that Apple is trying to basically differentiate the Pro Max a bit more from the Pro, kind of like with last year. The Pro Max got better zoom, while the lesser Pro didn't get those extra zoom upgrades. But one way or another, I think that this is going to end up creating quite a bit of an interesting scenario for other companies as far as competition goes, especially with companies like Samsung coming out with the S24 Ultra as early as just a few months from now. So it's going to be interesting to see how other smartphone companies end up responding. And if you do want to hear more about the Galaxy S24 Ultra, I'll leave a video right here if you want to go check that out next. And I'll see you over there. Adios.